Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Joining us on the show today is car owner, track owner. He's pretty much done it all in sprint car racing, Tod Quiring. Before we get to Tod, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in the York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or calling 717-292-8868. Now here's Tod. Tod, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thanks, Jeremy, for having me on.
No problem. I will say, before we go any further, you have the nicest backdrop of anybody who's done this so far, with the ocean in the background. I like it.
Oh, like I told you a few minutes ago, my guys always give me a little bit of crap for it, but my wife and I live in Florida in the wintertime, and so I just decided to put my backdrop in there like that. I'll change that when we go back to South Dakota here in a few weeks. So
I guess it's still cold in Minnesota.
yeah, but we've had a nice winter in Minnesota, South Dakota. We've had actually a pretty nice winter. It's pretty cold right now, but we have a lot of construction projects going on up there, which has been very conducive for that all winter. So we're pretty happy about that. So by the time I get back there, cross my fingers, it's going to be nice and we're ready for race season. So.
Yeah, I like that you guys started May at Huset's. In Pennsylvania, we like to run through the snow in February. So I like that you guys kind of have the season you do, so to speak. It makes more sense to me.
It's traditionally, even May is kind of a struggle. Knoxville is obviously 4 hours south of us, so they can squeeze in some April, but it's a challenge, in the Midwest through the years. It's just been tough. I think Pennsylvania has a little nicer earlier weather, as far as like getting spring type and that type of thing. So, but yeah, it's Mother's Day is our opener at Huset's, and it's always been a tradition, way pre-me on the track. So we just kept with that, and I think obviously we'll always stay with that.
So I've known you for quite a while, and I've always wondered, and I think other people do. Like I said earlier when we were talking off air, I think you could be in a lineup and people wouldn't necessarily know who you were. You're kind of mysterious, which that's probably a good thing in this day and age. But how did you get involved in racing? Like, even as a fan, you're a longtime fan. When did this all start that you kind of started having an affection for sprint car racing?
Well, I grew up close to Jackson Motorplex, and that's what really got me interested, the competitive part of racing. And I went there as a kid, and it's just, we used to go, not every Saturday night, but a lot of Saturday nights. We lived 18 miles from the racetrack, and that was the thing to do back then. We didn't have, when we were young kids, we didn't have all the travel, sports, that type of thing until we got a little bit older. So that's what we did, and our parents brought us there on Saturday night. So that was just a thing to do.
And obviously it's something that's been a part of your life. And then you got into sponsorship, I believe, before you even got into ownership. When did you do that? And kind of what's the timeline between sponsorship and then owning one of these things?
So I kind of not gave up on racing, but just, it wasn't a big part of my life going through like high school and college. And I was actually, I played college baseball. So I was driving through Oklahoma, and that's when the Open Wheel magazine, we were on a baseball spring trip to Texas or something. And we were in a convenience store, and there was an Open Wheel magazine there. And I thought, you know what? I used to read that. I bought it. So I was a senior then in college, and just started getting back into it. And I started reading. That was back, Kinzer and Sammy and all those guys, and just started reading that. That was before all the social media and all that good stuff. Cause that dates me a little bit, Jeremy. So that was probably like in 1990, right in there somewhere. So that dates me a little bit. So I started reading that, and then when I graduated from college, I got interested back in going to races in Knoxville and Jackson and Huset, so that type of thing. So one thing just kind of led to another.
And at that time, because I gotta, before we get to actually who's driven for you, because it's a pretty star-studded list. Um, Mainstream Holdings. It's a company that, not long after I knew who you were, I realized, because I check on everybody because I'm creepy like that. But what was the whole big game sports thing, the big game company, Mainstream Holdings? You're big into hunting. I've seen pictures of you online and everything, and it just turned into your living. How did that all come about? And then obviously that led into racing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's fairly detailed, the whole Mainstream Holdings and everything. I'll just give a high level of that. So the Mainstream Holdings was the holding company. Big Game was one of our brands in the industry, the outdoor industry. We owned a lot of different brands, Muddy and API and Hawk, and there's a bunch of them. So that was the holding company. Well, Big Game Motorsports was a separate division outside of Mainstream Holdings. So we just named it Big Game Motorsports. At this point, I probably, if I knew I was going to sell our company back then, I probably wouldn't have named it Big Game Motorsports, but it was a whole separate entity. So in 2018, I sold all our outdoor divisions, except for I still have a crossbow company that's a straggler out there, but I sold all the outdoor companies, and it was under Mainstream Holdings. There was probably 8 different entities underneath there. So I sold that, but Big Game Motorsports was not underneath there for obviously good reason. So we just kept the Big Game Motorsports name. So just kind of like it's just kind of like falling in, but it has nothing to do with the tree stands or anything like that. Big Game Motorsports has nothing to do with the outdoor part. It's just that's been long gone. A New York-based company owns it now, and it's just it's still doing very well, and they've grown it a great deal. So that's all good too. So
Has hunting always been something in a big part of your life that you ended up going into that business outside of racing? And was it a company that you built yourself?
yeah, so it evolved right after I got out of college. My father had a small job shop that he had one item that he was making for Cabela's, and I sat there one day and I thought, why aren't we making tens of, hundreds of items for Cabela's? And back in that day, it just wasn't, the manufacturing was way different and that type of thing. So I just branched off, and I knew the industry, the whole Bass Pro, Cabela's, Walmart. So I just basically started an entity that supplied, all those customers. When we were one of the largest, we were probably one of the top 5 hard goods producers, for all those companies. So
Yeah, I know talking to you before when and you said, Pennsylvania is one of our biggest customers for
absolutely.
big game tree stands. And I know in Pennsylvania, hunting's a religion because they take off school for it.
No, Pennsylvania the whole Northeast was huge. Pennsylvania, you take Michigan, Ohio, where everything east of Mississippi was our clientele, from game cameras to, we sold the company, we had 400 plus items we were producing. So it was just, I always told myself, when I'm 50 years old, I'm going to start managing my assets instead of managing people. And that's just what I did. So.
No, I mean, look, that's in today's day and age, that's what they call self-made. And you actually took something with an idea and turned it into something big. And you kind of parlayed that into a race team. When did you own your first sprint car?
So I started with Terry McCarl, sponsoring him, and I'm gonna mess up the years when I did that, and I still remember the first sponsorship was at Huset's, and I didn't know him. I didn't talk to him, and nice guy, and all that good stuff. So I think I gave him like $1,500 for a little hood sponsor or something like that. So that's where it all started. I sponsored him for a few years, and that evolved, and obviously we got into some bigger things, and I feel like the year that I started, I mean, I would buy motors and own some of his motors and things like that. And then in 2006, we went and ran the full Outlaw deal when there was a split, and we went with the Outlaws. And about that time is when I started probably taking over, a lot of the equipment, and probably in 2008 or nine, maybe it was the full ownership of that. And then it just kind of evolved from there. And I've just owned everything ever since. So whoever's driven for us.
Do you like that? Do you like the hands-on part of it more? I mean, is that kind of one of the reasons you did it? Just to be more involved? I know you have somebody who helps you out with that, Luke Lunt, obviously, is it just seems like you're a hands-on guy.
Well, I've always actually, yes and no. I mean, I have some good people. We have, other than our racetrack employees, we have like 10 full-time employees right now that work underneath our real estate entity. And Luke's our CFO, and I'd probably ask him to do a few more things out of a CFO character than what's normal. So we're trying to add depth to that a little bit. So yes, as far as owning the teams, there's some advantages to doing that. I mean, one of the advantages is Ryan Morrison and I built together, one hell of a motor program, and I think people can see that, by the way our car runs and the 18 car runs. So I mean, those are basically the two main cars on that motor program, and so those are some of the things you can do when you control your own basically destiny, and you can add the right people. And racing's not easy. I tell people all the time, I've owned and sold and built and still own a lot of businesses, and racing's probably the hardest one that I have. If I ever figure it out, I might just quit, because I don't think, that's what's I like the challenge. You just try to keep getting better, and it's not easy. It's not easy, and so I commend every race team out there, that's doing this, all the way from local to, if you want to run regional. I mean, everyone out there. I mean, it's not easy. I don't care what level you're at. I mean, Donnie Schatz and I are good buddies, and it's not easy for him either. It's just, he's had a lot of success all his life, but I mean, day to day, I mean, there's always stumbling blocks. So it's just, but that's business too. But racing's a little more difficult to figure out. One minute you're on fire, and the next minute it's like you're scratching your head. What are we doing here? So
Back to that list of drivers you've had. Obviously, I'll talk about David Gravel in a minute. You've had Terry McCarl, Danny Lasowski, Sammy Swindell, Craig Delansky. I mean, Kerry Madsen. That's kind of a who's who. How were you able to always get drivers who I consider Hall of Fame caliber drivers? I mean, that says something about kind of the operation you run. How are you able to get a list like that?
I think people always thought after, we have all the equipment to do it. That's part of when you get to be a certain level in this, sport. You don't want to go drive for somebody that maybe should be a regional team or just a local team or that type of thing. I mean, I'm not going to point fingers, but in the past, we all know who those guys have been, and it maybe makes you look bad as a driver. So I think, we've always not so much promoted it, but I think people know that we have a great foundation with, we're financially sound. We know if we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it, and we're going to sign 1-year contracts or multi-year contracts. And, we're going to pay our guys all the way through those contracts, and we just don't go week to week. That's why we don't have a lot of turnover, in our team. So it might be an annual turnover if we do. So we've had pretty good luck doing that, where, some teams, if they have a tough month, they're firing everybody, and then they're changing around. And nothing against that, but I think that's part of it, Jeremy. But people know we're solid, and we always finish the year out. We don't let someone go in the middle of the year.
It's funny you say. I always say it's building. Okay, you've got to build. It's no different than a business. You're a very successful businessman. and I view racing as a business. You can't just keep going parts in and out. And I think you would agree. You got to build these race teams, and it's got to be built like a business. You got to put faith in guys. You got to let them have that ebb and flow of failure and success. Is that kind of how you've approached this really throughout your whole ownership career?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm hands-on, but I'm not very hands-on. I let our guys do what they want to do. For example, you try to hire a good person right now. We have Cody Jacobs as a crew chief. We have Zach Patterson and then Stephen Ham Riley, and obviously David. I really work with those guys to work together. That's really what I do. When if there's any bickering or whatever, I just tell them, guys, you need to work together. Basically, Cody and David, if you guys aren't going to work together, this isn't going to work. I can do whatever. I can put another $1 million into this. It still doesn't matter. You guys need to work together. And I think that's why we're continuing to be our growth and successful and, that type of thing. So I think, you know, that's what I mostly do is try to keep these guys, I mean, we have bad nights. There's no doubt. I don't care how good you are. You're going to have bad nights. You have to keep them, and I'm competitive. I get mad too, but it's like, I can go Monday morning and I can go do my other stuff. These guys live it, every day. So, to keep good people, I think is good. And I think if you ask any one of our guys that are working for us, I treat them good. We give them probably perks that other teams maybe wouldn't, but they bust their ass. I mean, they're out there, and every team busts their ass. But that's how we're trying to get on top, and have a successful race team.
It's funny, and I would tell you, I think we've disagreed a few times over the years, but one thing I've never heard a bad word about your team from me, whether they're there now or not. You've always treated them well, so I commend you for that. Obviously, whether you're in business or racing, you evolve. What is something maybe you didn't do well in the beginning of owning these teams to now? What is something you've gotten better at as an owner?
That's a great question. First of all, I wish I had more time back in 2008 and 9, when I could have paid more attention to it, but we had a lot of balls in the air and that type of thing. I have more time now to look at the small details, to say, hey, this isn't working, or, do we add another guy? That's one thing that we're thinking about doing. Cody and I have talked about it. We probably will do it is add another guy for just maybe driving the truck. It's just another step of, and we try to get our guys home more, try to, give them a travel budget, that type of thing. And we have kind of done that this year. Scotty Bogosong, has worked for me on and off for years, and he lives in the Sioux Falls market. So he's going to kind of be support part-time out of our shop this year. So we've kind of done that 3.5 type guy this year that he'll come on the road, and he has a CDL. So just looking at things like that how can we, relieve some of the pressure, the day in, day outs of building these race teams.
Well, speaking of a shop, you build a new one. I mean, you're always looking to improve, and you build a new shop, you have a new shop. That's quite an undertaking. I know somebody else who's done it. That's not as simple as just putting up 4 walls or whatever. I mean, it's an undertaking. What it was that what made you do that? And especially now when you're in the middle, kind of look, you guys are the favorite to win the title.
Yeah, so part of that evolved. I had a lot of real estate in Wyndham, Minnesota, which is where I grew up. Still have a home there, but we live in South Dakota in Florida for most of the year. So I sold a lot of my warehouses over there and all of our old mainstream holdings things. We're going to keep one office there, but I sold our race shop to one of my friends that owns a large oil company there 2 years ago. He's just letting me use it till I get this new shop built. So I gotta commend him for that. So our goal was, we didn't have an office by the racetrack. I need to get Taylor, Doug, and Ryan a good office over there. And we're building a state-of-the-art office in this facility as well that overlooks the racetrack.
Oh.
Pretty large conference room. That's all part of the marketing plan we have. So we just built a 20,000 square foot facility that's going to be finished here in May that everyone will move into. And it'll also be the Huset's office for our Huset's team too. So like all those guys and ticketing and that type of thing during the week. And it's just right above the hill and the entrance of Huset's. So yeah, and I'll spend a couple days a week over there too. And basically in the summertime, and obviously probably not in the wintertime, but I'll be over there a good amount too. So
I'll get to Huset's in a minute because I was there for the first time last year. And since Speed Week is now moved, I can come out to the High Bank Nationals finally. So
yeah, I appreciate, we worked with some of the, some of the guys out in Pennsylvania that are the who's and we really, I mean, that's what we like to do, is work together. And I know it's a small deal in their whole thing, but if we can attract, 3-4 Pennsylvania cars, we're all about that. Cause that event we're putting on there is, it's not Eldor or Knoxville or Williams Grove yet, but I think for a short track, we're going to get it, right up in that caliber running in June. So I think, obviously appreciate, all the Pennsylvania support on that.
you in 2014, at the end of 2014, National Sprint League. What made you then start a series? Because you owning a car wasn't enough headache. You added owning a series. What made you go that direction? I know that's probably in and around when I met you. It seemed like you just wanted to do something for Midwest racing. Is that correct? And what was kind of the emphasis behind that?
Yeah, that's before I bought Jackson. So we talked with Knoxville, and I had my race team, and we weren't really financially geared to race the Outlaws. We just had the whole crew and everything together. So we decided, let's start basically a series, and excuse me, and Chuck Zitterich ran it, which Chuck is no longer with us, but so I thought, I had a vision, like, let's start a regional deal. Let's just try to make Knoxville, Huset's, Jackson. Let's go Friday nights at, Eagle or whoever and run a 410 deal. I feel that we didn't have pay-per-view back then, or there was no pay-per-view. If we'd had pay-per-view, and what really ended up probably not making that work is Chuck Brennan bought Huset's. Okay. So he wanted to have everything, and I have nothing against Chuck because I got the good deal on the thing anyway. So, so I have nothing against him, and I always thank him about it. I haven't talked to him since I bought it, but he kind of didn't want to be on board with it. He wanted to do his own thing. So he would schedule races, he would just try to, so we tried it 2 years.
Yep.
And I invested, we didn't have a lot of sponsors, none hardly. So, I mean, I don't mind saying I lost a couple $1 million on the deal, and we tried it, and it didn't work. So we just walked away from it. But what I will say is I learned a lot from that.
That was my next question. What was your biggest takeaway from that?
Well, I learned it's tough to run a race series for sure. I mean, for sure. And start one. It's tough to do that. It's super hard to do that. I mean, it's like no one wants to jump on board with it, or what are we going to get out of it? And which I understand, so I actually ended up funding a lot of the courses and covering a lot of the losses and things like that, just to try to get it going. Well, when Huset's did what they did, then at that point, I just decided, I'm just gonna, let's see what happens here. And then I bought Jackson, and obviously it probably all worked out for the better anyway. So it was fine, but it's tough to start a series and run a series. I know one thing.
You buy Jackson because, the race team, you just keep adding on to your kind of portfolio there. You're out of NSL, you buy Jackson. What was that, just a kind of like a labor of love, so to speak? It's where you started. You went when you first went to races, kind of, and you got the chance. And was that kind of how that went?
Yeah, Jackson was very dilapidated. They were pretty much all, there wasn't a lot of sprint car stuff going on. I mean, the Fair Board owned it. In my opinion, Jackson Fair Board is not a good Fair Board, but I'll just leave it at that. And they're just not very, they don't really understand the business world and that type of thing. So I bought it from them. They wanted me to lease it. I said, I'm not going to put improvements in. I'll buy it from you. And I tried to buy it in 2013 and they didn't want to sell it. Well, they came back in 2015, I think it was, and they wanted to sell it then. So I bought it and just put together a plan. At that point in time, Steve and Greg Rubin still owned Huset's. But when I bought Jackson, I feel like they maybe thought they needed to sell Huset's at that point, which that's when they sold to Chuck Brennan. So we went with our whole remodel. It was a very narrow, probably an old school half mile. I know the old timers liked it. I did when I was a kid, but cars have changed and speeds have changed and it just didn't put on very good racing. So we just reconfigured it. Is it perfect? I'm not saying it's perfect, but what is a perfect racetrack anymore? It's probably the guy that wins that thinks it's perfect. So that's probably what a perfect racetrack is. So we put a fair amount of money into it, and then we ran for 3 years, probably 3-4 years, and then Chuck Brennan, was trying to run Huset's over there, and basically COVID hit, and he tried to sell it to me in 2018, 19, I think it was, and for a pretty good amount. And I said, that doesn't work, Chuck. We kept in contact, and he was very, polite, to me. I mean, for the most part. And when COVID hit in March, April, I think it was, he shot me a text and said, "I'm selling. Are you a buyer?" And so we worked out the deal. And I mean, I feel it was not now. I think, yeah, it's a good deal. So it's probably Huset's ended up blending off Jackson, probably. So it was Huset's is a much better community as far as supporting racetrack, and so larger community, as Jeremy, it's just there's a lot more support in Huset's. So that's kind of how all that evolved.
You seem to be able to wait and get a better deal. Your patience, you have patience. I will give you that. I've talked to you numerous times, even just about general races. And we've talked about streaming and pay-per-view, which I'll hit on then. But you're a patient guy and will wait out to get the deal that you want.
Well, that's probably that. I mean, that's business, I mean, if you go pay sticker price for everything, you try to buy your dips, I guess we've done a good job in real estate and everything. And if I want something, I'll go buy it. There's no doubt. But if I think it's, works, but yeah, I mean, it's just that one kind of worked out well, and we use the same staff, and we blend off, the racetracks, and we have a nice little staff going there. And so that's a nice little entity for us. We're looking forward to continuing to build that for sure. So
Huset's is a nice facility. Jackson, you turned that into a really nice facility, but I want to focus on Huset's a minute. You seem to have a vision of what you want there. Like we talked about the High Bank Nationals a little bit. How important was it for you to kind of give a premier event that kind of makes it a focal point in the sprint car community? Because right now, end of June, $250,000, $100,000 in the same week, that kind of makes you a focal point. So what was your vision when you took Huset's, and has it changed over the short time you've owned it?
yeah, so I wanted a big event. I think big events are where, if you're gonna build something big, weekly shows are great. We love our weekly shows. I know everyone, PA, all over the country, loves their weekly shows. They're a challenge for everybody. I don't care who tells you what, they're a challenge. So it's part of it. I always wanted a big weekly show, or excuse me, a big event. And we've tried different things like Huset's combination of Jackson,
Mhm.
that type of thing. But we feel like we've got a lot of traction at Huset's. I mean, our pre-sale tickets now are like really good. We've got a lot of support coming on board. Obviously, you know, pay-per-view, they like it. So the big event there, and I like the way Tony Stewart split his deal up and did qualify Wednesday, race for bigger money Thursday. We're not going to pay $1 million unless Tony borrows me the $1 million, but it breaks it up so everyone can make money all week. I feel we're paying good Wednesday night, paying very good Thursday night. Then we start over, qualify Friday for Saturday. So every night means something. And that's really what I think the fans like. And the drivers love it. But let's face it, we need to have the fans in the stands. And I think our ticket sales are showing that right now. So, I mean, I didn't create that idea. I like what Eldora's done for a few years, splitting that up. So,
You get out to, I've seen you in Pennsylvania, you were in Florida.
sure.
I mean, you get out. It's, it seems like, you know, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. We've heard this expression before, and you're not afraid to take ideas from other places, add them to Huset's, and maybe put your twist on it. Again, just good business.
Yeah, so we try to make we'll jump in the plane. I'll take Doug, Ryan, Taylor,
Yep.
our guys that run the track. We'll jump in the plane for a day and just like we went to Lernerville last year, like just for one night. Just let's go see what we can learn. And I think I've told you that, Jeremy. Let's our guys go around, they look at I do all the time. They go around, if they can pick one thing out of there, maybe they're doing it right. You know, like let's pick out one thing that they're doing right. So we like doing that. We like looking at different tracks. If you can just get one small thing and then put it all into that, that's how we built our businesses too. You're very observant. You try to go out and look at what other people are doing right. And then you look at what they're doing wrong too. And I'm sure people look at what we're doing wrong too. So I mean that's they should be anyway, because we do things wrong. They're believe me, we have some things that we need to fix too. So if we didn't, we wouldn't need it, you know, but we have, you know, I mean, if you think you're perfect, I think you're like, you're done, you know, you just need to keep working at what you do. I don't care if it's a racetrack, a race car, or in business or your personal life. So I think it's a constant process, Charlie.
Streaming, pay-per-view, two different things, but you've seen this evolve now. You mentioned if you added an NSL, probably you might still be in business with that thing. Where do you come out on this whole streaming pay-per-view thing, and what's the future in your mind? Because again, you have real world business, obviously, what I like to call real world, because racing sometimes isn't real world. But where do you see this going? Is it good for the sport? I mean, I think there's good and I think there's bad. What needs to happen? Where do you come out on all that?
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, you and I have talked about this a fair amount.
Yes.
I mean, you're obviously involved deeply into streaming, um, you know, with financially as well. And I think streaming is good if it's done right. I mean, I can't go to every race. I love watching my race car. I mean, I pulled up Williams Grove last weekend. I'm in Florida. I pulled up. I watch. So I watch. I look. You know, and I think everyone does now. I think it's kind of good that all the cameramen aren't that great out there because then it makes you want to go to the races. So that I think is a big part. Let's hire like really like shitty cameramen so they can just follow around and not know where the races are at. So that makes you want to go to the races. But all joking aside, I think the revenue part of it is everyone going to get the same revenue off it? No. I feel that both series are trying to figure out where the revenue gets split. You know, I see what the Outlaws are doing and increasing. Obviously, the World of Outlaws in the high limit couldn't do what they're doing without streaming. I mean, it's very well funded by streaming. Um, I think it's good and it's bad. Not every track's going to get streaming money though, or big streaming money, and you're gonna have to step up to the plate probably to get it, or get a portion of it. So there's viewers, and it's a business model. Honestly, it's a full blown business model. I mean, should everyone get it? I don't think they should. You know, if you're not putting if you're not bettering your facility, if you're not putting on a bigger race, if you're paying 10,000 to win and 1,000 for second, I don't think you should get a lot of. I just think it should be, you know, appropriate for each event. So, and again, that's my opinion. I mean, I think it's good and bad, and I think you feel the same way because you're involved in it as
Yeah.
well. Is there a clear cut answer right now? I don't know. I mean, I think all this needs to shake out. All the series and everything needs to shake out and see what happens, basically. So,
Yeah, I mean, we do the pay-per-view, which is per race model, and the reason is we directly revenue share with the track. So instead of, you know, and you and I have talked about it. It's, I think the bad part is fans get mad because they don't want to pay that. The good news is the tracks like it because they're getting what I would call their fair share. Because if you're a good track, the racing's good, you're going to do well. If it's not, and people don't want to watch you, it won't. It weeds that out, and that's kind of why we went with that model. And I know Huset's is Dirt Vision. You guys are an outlaw track, and I'm sure other streaming services have reached out to you at times, especially for a place like Huset's. But
yeah, we have flow for our late model event
yep,
and that type of thing. But, it's the reason why we have Dirt Vision. Obviously, a lot of our big events are part of that. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, they love Sunday nights, I mean, I think it's good
yes,
for them. So
I'll
it's,
watch it.
it's good for them. So streaming, I think is good. Yeah, we lose fans. There's no doubt. Maybe not on the big events. Our weekly shows, we feel that we probably lose 300 to 500 people out of a 2,000 crowd. Probably, is probably what we lose on a weekly show. But does it make up for it? With the revenues and so forth. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever know that. But it's just part of it, and I think every track has to work through what they feel is the best for them. I feel like everyone's different in streaming.
Got to put you on the spot because, well, I can. World of Outlaws. What's that?
I love that.
Yeah. World of Outlaws High Limit. It's all obviously it was the big talk over the last year. I mean, I knew this was coming since the middle of last year at least. We all probably knew the All-Stars were going to sell, but here we are, 2 national series. And their fans seem more divided even than drivers. Where do you come out on the whole World of Outlaw high limit deal? Do you believe 2 national series can exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think time will tell that. I mean, obviously, with our race team and racetrack, we've just stayed the course, from what we've been doing. I mean, I'm a very loyal person, with the business, everything. So that's why, I mean, I get along with Brad and Kyle, those guys, I get along very well. We had a high limit show last year at
Yes.
Huset's. And we would have had one this year. We just couldn't figure out a time to put it in. It just didn't really work to put it in. It wasn't, some people probably think that it's part of our contract. It's not. I mean, we can do what we want. The one thing that I see, because I've built brands in other industries and sold brands and continuing to build them, the World of Outlaws has a very good brand. And I can speak for our people at Huset's. We get probably a customer. If they know the World of Outlaws are there, we're going to get them one time a year. Now, your race fan is going to go to all the races. They're going to go to the high limit, everything. What I'm more concerned about is, I think the Outlaws part of it. They'll get crowds and everything, and the high limit probably will too. But these racetracks they're going to, I think there's going to be some that are going to second guess why they had a show. I mean, I see some of them. I see the demographic. Now I think it's good for some of these race drivers because not everyone can race for the same 12,000 every night. You know, and that's just the way it is. So I think it's good to split some of these guys up, Jeremy. I really do, and let them run all over. You know, I guess at the end of the day, what series is going to be the best? I think that'll just be time will tell. You know, where I think the money is on both sides right now, so they're both paying good money. So who can sustain the business model? It's really what it is. Right now, I think the racers are taking advantage of it. You're getting some of these guys that are racing for bigger money. They're going racing the high limit. They're not mixing up, with the Outlaws. I mean, if we had the best 40 cars in the country racing an Outlaw show every single night, none of them would make any money except for the top 5 guys. So it's probably good for that part of it. I'm more concerned about the racetracks and they'll sustain it. We'll be fine at our racetracks because I think our business model is strong. We have big enough events, but we need to have other racetracks out there as well. And that's what I'm most concerned.
It's funny. I'm the same way. I think these two series are different. I think you're going to make more drivers money. So I'm very much on board with that same thought. My concern is weekly racing because it adds more big shows, especially in a place like Pennsylvania, where there's 115 shows a year, which I think we all can agree is just too many. But, or at least I think it's too many. But my concern is the weekly program just being obsolete and people picking and choosing the big events. My other concern is kind of something you said. My concern is if you're a track and do well with a high limit show, their model's different, their structure is a little different, rights fees, so on and so forth. That little conference down in Florida, that RPM deal with all the promoters, they say something, and the Outlaws might have to make some changes in regards to rights fees because promoters who have a high limit race might have to say, hey, we got rights fees. It worked out. It's great. Do these other promoters go, hey, wait a minute, I want to do that?
No, I think you're exactly right there, Jeremy. I think that's where the business model, and I'm going to say the high limit in the world of Outlaws, I think every year they'll probably tweak it and change it. And, I guess what I hope is it all settles in, but I actually think it's going to take 3+ years for that to happen. I really do. The one thing that I think has been, you see all the big races, a lot of the big races, even though high limit scheduled on our Jackson Nationals, but I mean, is what it is. But they're letting these guys go race the big races where the money's at for the most part. I think you'll see that shift around a little bit more, it depends on who continues to keep Port Royal and some of the tracks in Pennsylvania. That's kind of out of our control with different existing contracts and things like that. So I think it's kind of an evolving deal, Jeremy. I honestly do. I think it's bad right now. I think the fans are making more of a bigger stink about it. Let's let the year settle out and see what happens. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Then everyone makes their own decision, So, as far as our race team and racetracks, we just stayed the course is really what we did to see what happened, instead of just jumping off the ledge. And that's really what I feel a good business model is at this point. So that's what we did. And
I was going to ask.
It's going to be that. I mean, even if one series is better than the other, I think there can be 2 series. It'll have to get tweaked. I feel like that's business, though.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You obviously you have one of the top 3 teams in the country. There's no doubt about that. And you can make the argument that Brad won the title last year. You guys won more races. So what made you guys choose the Outlaws? I mean, I understand Huset's, you've been a long time Outlaw supporter. Did that come into play? Your loyalty you mentioned, is that something at the end of the day, hey, I'm going to take, again, that patience, take a wait and see attitude?
No, it was probably more the the branding of the Outlaws and just stay in the course, Jeremy. That's really what it was. Obviously David markets his brand, he markets his t-shirts, that's his gig. We sat down as a team. Obviously I had the final say, but I talked to all the team and stuff, and that's just what we decided to do. Nothing against the high limit. We're going to race our 4 races that we can, and and just move on, and see what happens through the end of the year, and just see how everything shakes out. So, put it this way, I've ran a series before, not to the magnitude of a high limit, but I'm glad Brad's doing it instead of me right now.
Do you think, running a series, running a team, owning tracks, just being a sponsor, do you think that's helped you in these times where there might be a little uncertainty, or there might be some things come up that I would use the word uncomfortable? Do you think it's helped you kind of navigate these waters, so to speak?
Yeah, probably just the whole last 35 years of business and everything, whether it's racing or everything, just dealing with people and that type of thing. Yeah, it's just a lot of people get emotional about racing, and it's easy to do that, when you get a bad call, or you get penalized, or you get a jump start, and then all of a sudden you want to fire everybody, and well, I'm going to a different series. We've had the same thing happen to our race teams through the years, and you just got to stay. That's kind of what we decided to do this year, is stay grounded. Do I don't wish anything bad on any series, and you mentioned a good point, Jeremy, on the weekly type events and where they're going to go, and we've created quite an alliance with Knoxville, and I need to mention this because we work with them very closely, and we have some new tow money packages, combined, individual, come out. They're very substantial. They're almost, some of them are almost close to what these series are paying to continue to keep I'm going to say the feeder grounds for these series, because I feel you need to bring these kids up before they get on I said it in, I think David did a show or something with Casey Kane and
Yep.
and myself. I think you need to go win Knoxville, Huset. I'm talking Midwest now. I think you need to win Williams Grove and Port Royal and Lincoln before you go out on the road. So it's our job to continue to strengthen that. We have, if you've seen Knoxville's purse and
Oh, it's
Huset's
ridiculous.
purse, and we're continuing to do that. Now we have a new tow money package combined coming out, and we're working, with trying to, some of our key competitors, that are going to compete. So we're doing our part to try to keep that feeder series going for our weekly show. So I think I would like to see more tracks, PA tracks, work together like that. Ohio losing the All Stars, they're maybe gonna have to do something like that. So Jackson, Huset's, Knoxville working close together. We work somewhat with Grand Forks, even though there's not a ton of travelers up there, but Knoxville, Huset sure is probably 7 or 8 sprint cars, competitive sprint cars every week. So those guys will get rewarded this year for continuing to do that. So
I admire the Midwest, because if I was Grand Poobah of Central Pennsylvania, it would be run like the Midwest, because I think in Central Pennsylvania, the season's too long. It just is. And you guys do work together, where here, that's a slippery slope. And I know you and I've talked about that, because all the guys in here, and it is slippery, and it's hard to believe they don't work together. Is that something that surprises you a little bit with stuff you've heard and whatnot?
are you talking about the Pennsylvania?
Yeah, the Pennsylvania deal.
Yeah, there's more tracks and there's more population out there. So there is, like, now if we were running 2, 4, 10 races within each other, it just wouldn't work. So I think, and since I've owned these tracks, I've really tried to promote that, is like, guys, if you want to go race, we'll take a night off. Like, if there's a local track, and there's not a lot of 410 tracks around us, but even if it's a 360 deal or something like that, hey, have your night. We will stay off of your night, because I think more racing just wears out your fan, and then you're going to get a little bit of pay-per-view. So I think we don't have as many tracks on Jeremy, so it's kind of a deal where I don't really, it's different here in the Midwest for sure. So
We have that New York mentality too. So your race team, I'll let you go shortly. You only got a couple more. Before you guys were hunting, so to speak, Brad Sweet. Now you're the hunted guy because you guys are the favorite. People like me said that you guys are the heir apparent. Brad Sweet's gone. Is it different, even as an owner who maybe you're not involved all the time? Do you have discussions with the guys? Because it is different this year. You're the team to beat. Whereas before the last 5 years, Brad's been the team to beat. Is that a different mentality, or for you, is it just business as usual?
I think it's business as usual. We haven't really talked about that too much. I mean, quite honestly, I wish Brad was still racing the Outlaws, because if we would win the title, then, people will say, well, Brad was there or whatever. But quite honestly, I think points championship comes from being consistent. Personally, myself, I just want to go win races. I mean, the points championship comes or whatever, but so we haven't talked about it. We're just out trying to get better every night.
I don't believe in asterisks. Okay. I don't. If you win the Outlaw title, you earned it. But you're a Knoxville guy too. And I know you want a Knoxville Nationals really bad. If you had to choose between the World of Outlaw title, which would be your first one, or the Knoxville Nationals, which would it be?
Knoxville Nationals, 100%.
Wow, you didn't even hesitate.
No, I wouldn't hesitate on that.
Well, I thought this would be rough. I thought that was a hard one. You always piss me off with that stuff. I think I had a good one.
But I think we can win them both. So,
well, obviously, I mean, David, when you hired David Gravel, why David Gravel? I mean, I know why I would hire David Gravel. Why did you hire David Gravel?
So people don't know this. David called me a long time, maybe in 2015. Good young kid, 13, yes. 14, maybe, going through all his rides. Good young kid. We always just stayed, in touch, passively, and always thought he was a really good driver. Common sense, makes a lot of good decisions on the racetrack and off the racetrack too. So I just kept. He always reminds me of that too. Like when I told him, he said, "You keep practicing," type deal or whatever. And I was nice about it. So when he went to drive for CJB. I sponsored that. I was just a marketing partner and sponsored that. So David and I got to be kind of close during that whole deal. And then we were going through driver changes with Lasowski and then Kerry came to drive and things like that in between. And then he decided he was going to go drive for the 41 car, Jason Johnson Racing. So, which is great. We just kept in good touch and part of it is we didn't have a traveling crew chief at that point. I think that was probably the deciding factor because great guy Forbrook, he just couldn't travel the World of Outlaws, right. with everything there. So that was probably the deciding factor at that point. So we just always kept in touch, and then things evolved, and obviously David's driving for us now. So it's been a period of probably a 10-year process of just staying in touch. So that's kind of where that's at.
You're coming up on 100 wins as a car owner with the World of Outlaws. And that's some pretty illustrious company there. Carl Kinzer, Steve Kinzer, guys like that. I think you'll become, if I'm not mistaken, I think like the 5th, or there've been 5, you might be the 6th. Okay. Something like that, where you'd win 100 World of Outlaw races as an owner. Have you thought about that? I mean, that's some elite company. Swindell, Steve Kinzer, Carl Kinzer, I believe Danny Schatz is one of them too. I mean, that's Hall of Fame material.
It's kind of cool. It's milestones, I think. It's kind of cool. I don't sit there and think about it every day, but I'm sure it'll end up happening. Hopefully this year. If it doesn't, then I might be mad, Jeremy. But no, it's very cool. My 2 boys are very involved in racing. I think they're kind of more excited about the legacy part of it than me. And it's kind of cool for me to probably someday turn that over to them, and they'll continue it. And that's kind of part of this new little museum we're building, the race shop, and collect all our, trophies and everything. So yeah, it's a great milestone. It's a very cool deal, and within, an elite company basically. So yeah, I think I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. And then what's the next milestone? You want to catch the next guy, probably. So, and some of those guys will never catch, I mean, with the 5s and 600s, and Donnie, I
Right.
think with 3 something, and, Casey has, I think, 2 something. So yeah, it's a pretty cool deal.
You're in your 50s. I believe you're in your 50s.
54.
54. Well, you're 2 years older than me, and you look like you're in better shape than me. But how long do you do this? How long do you continue to? I know you have obviously your boy. You're going to pass it on to them, but how long do you stay directly involved? Huset's, the 2-car. I mean, I know you love doing it, and I know you have people under you, but still, it's a part of your time. I mean, it demands some of your time. How long do you do this yet?
We'll keep doing it, and every year I'm passing the torch off a little bit more. Like now that our shop's going over to Sioux Falls or Brandon, Taylor, my son, lives over there. He works closely with Cody. Some of that's shifting over to him, the day-to-day type stuff. So we'll do it unless Taylor says he doesn't want to do it, or Andrew, my younger son, they don't want to do it anymore. Well, I'll probably still keep doing it to a certain age. But I think definitely we'll have a race team. Probably is when you're gone and I'm gone, Jeremy. I'm pretty sure of that. So
Well, you're a lifer. That's good. Do you still have the same passion?
absolutely. That's why it's kind of fun owning the racetracks, because you see both sides of it as well. And I do. That's why I mean Dirt Vision, Flow, you can watch these races and
Yep.
that type of, you can sit back and put on the big screen, whether we like it or not. I mean, I use it. So yeah, no, I do have the same passion for it, and I like to keep building things and try to, get on top. But the one thing is, and Donnie Shots and Kinzer and those guys can tell you, and we did it in our business before we sold Mainstream Holdings. I told our guys, it's easier to climb the mountain and have goals every year, but when you get on top of that
Yep.
mountain, where do you go? What do you do? So we did that in our other business and sold it, and we're continuing doing other businesses. So that's a challenge. When you get on top, what's next? Or,
Yep.
keep winning races, but what races, and now what do we do? So that'll probably be, and hopefully we're still climbing the mountain. So hopefully, that's a challenge at some point, but that's harder to deal with probably than climbing the mountain. So
Yeah. I've always, when I covered the NFL and I talked to players who, won the rushing title and then had success in the playoffs and stuff, always staying there is the hardest thing because there's only one way to go. And then
exactly.
people come after you. And look, if you guys win the title this year and win the Knoxville Nationals Kings Royal, trust me, teams are going to gear up and come after you next year. It's just the way it is.
There's no doubt, but you look at multiple, Donnie's won it multiple times, Kinzer, so I mean, we're way far off of that, so there is still that mountain to climb and so forth, and that drive to do that. So yeah, I think, I know we'll have a race team for a long time. So
Well, Todd, I want to thank you for giving me so much of your time. This is an interview I've wanted to do for a while. I probably talked to you about it a number of times over the years, and I'm glad I got
to found a date, Jeremy, to do it. It's always been conflicting.
You're always so busy. But again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. It was all good stuff.
I appreciate what you do. I mean, I'm obviously watch all your stuff, and you're doing a great job. This new podcast you have is awesome, and I watch it all the time. It gives a different perspective from different people, and we all don't need to agree, because if we all agreed, it wouldn't be as fun, right? So, but
Not for me.
I think, but No, it's great. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. That's going to wrap up this edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com deep dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Thanks again to Tod Quiring. A lot of good stuff there. Don't forget to click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and check out our daily exclusive content at www.sprintcarunlimited.com. We'll be back with another edition of the deep dive next week. Stay tuned.